Hello everybody, this is TJ with ShopBot Tools, and today's training we're going to talk about nesting. How to take different parts and get them nested into the material that you're using. This is nice because what you can do is you can minimize scrap and maximize efficiency of getting parts out of that material. So what we'll be looking at here is how to figure out to get all these different pieces nested in here, still leaving room for hold down, for the tool clearance, and the parts from coming out of there. So what we're actually looking at, just to get started here, is we need to take a project. So right here is a moose that is a slots together moose that come every December training, at our in-house trainings. We will cut these out for the people. Everybody cuts reindeer, and do something a little bit different. Let's cut a little moose out. So what we'll do is we'll start out with just a single moose. There's the parts that it takes to make one moose, and this is nice because this right here will fit on a 18 by 24 piece of material, and it'll easily fit on your desktop. But let's just say now we've got multiple people that we want to cut this moose for, and I really don't want to have to sit here and do copy and paste, edit, copy, edit, paste, and shift and move these around. It's just not very efficient. So that's where we have this nesting feature that's built right into our Vcard Pro or our Aspire softwares by Vectric. And I'd like to point out too, they've got the great tutorial on nesting. Is what when I first started, I watched the tutorial on there, and I just wanted to do one a little bit more specific to the ShopBot, but very good tutorial to sit and watch, as well as their others, and help. And you can visit their website and ours, as well as get more information right here from the help menu in Vcard Pro. But what we'll be looking at here is the nesting. Underneath offset array and nest, the very bottom right icon is nest selected objects. And what we'll do today is we'll go through all these different things and explain to you what they are. And I want to help you be able to take a project like this where you can cut one out, that's great, and now you want to start cutting multiples out efficiently. So here is the one moose, and now we've taken it and put all of these into one big nested sheet. So that's what we're going to get to with today's training. Okay, to demonstrate the arrow, what I've done is, in the nesting parts here, we're going to come back and show you how to set all these different parameters up. But basically what you'll do is have your part, the number that you need, you get it to fit in your material. Once you're happy with how it lays out in there, then you can take it to the ShopBot and start cutting it. So here we are with that scrap piece of material out on the machine. And here's using a plastic nailer that shoots plastic nails. So versus running screws or vacuum on this, I can shoot these plastic nails in the corners, and then if I hit it with my router bit, it's not going to damage the bit. So these are just random sizes of plastic, and this just happened to be the one that was next in the pile. We nested it to the size, and then just start cutting it out, the different arrows. Things we need to start thinking about in the world of nesting. One is the diameter of the bit. That's going to make a difference. Two is going to be the direction of the cut. We're using a piece of HDPE plastic here, which doesn't necessarily have a grain to it. Where plywoods and hardwoods, they do have a grain. So can our parts be rotated within the material? We also need to see how much of a border gap we can leave right here along the edge. Depending on your vacuum hold down or how close you can get to the edge, you really don't want to be cutting out into that area and having an open cut off the edge. So these are the kind of things we got to start thinking about before just clicking on the nesting and hoping it's going to make it all happen for us. So the project that we'll be working with today is an iPod stand. I'm sorry, an iPhone stand. So for you to have this at your desk and have it charging while it's plugged into the USB, this will be a project where we'll cut one out for the video, and then everybody in the office said, hey, those are neat, I'd like one. So going to use the nesting feature to nest one of these for everybody that needs an iPhone stand. So that's what we're going to be working with today. That would be what you're going to see here in your files. So with that being said, I'm going to bring open the iPhone stand Vcard Pro file. So here it is. First thing that I did was went and got the specs for the iPhone and drew it to its size, and then from there started designing this part around it. And then the first one that was cut out, prototype, cut 4 of them out of one sheet. So we need to be able to get from the stance of having one project and then get it nicely fit into a piece of material like this. So Right here is our unnested iPhone stand. We have just the one stand and we have the one bit base. It's a two-part thing like we saw in the picture. And we need to be able to figure out how to nest that into our size material here. So the size of the material we have to work with is a 24-inch by 18-inch piece of material. And the whole goal with the nesting training today is how do I efficiently get as many of these as I can out of this material. I'd rather have a product than a piece of scrap that's going to either get recycled or put in the ground someplace. So that's what we're going to try to achieve with nesting. Okay, so if I come down here to where it says Nest Selected Objects, it's actually the word nesting nested into this little icon. I will open this up here, and let's just start by looking down into what these parameters are. It's pretty much plug and play, and the beauty of this is you can just keep coming down here and going preview and reset preview until you get it exactly the way that you want it. So first of all, it's asking for the tool diameter, and if you look at the little icon here, the D is showing the D that corresponds with this, the diameter of your tool. That would be not necessarily the shank diameter, but the actual cutter diameter. So and then a clearance is with C, references over here to the C of the clearance in between the edge of the bit and the edge of your material. So sometimes for people this one gets a little bit confusing, but I'm going to show it to you here on this project. So right here, this blue circle, if we were looking from an aerial view down, we're looking at a 1/4 inch diameter bit. That measures exactly a 1/4 inch in diameter. And if we had our 0.25, that's our cutter. If we had our clearance set at 0, this is what we would see right now. We just have a tool diameter. So if you're looking to get an efficient cut where you're cutting both parts, if say you have parallel parts where you're cutting along in between, you could be doing both edges at once, but you got to be careful with that because it could be doing a climb and a conventional cut, one on one side, one on the other. Most of us, when we're cutting, will actually have this with a space in between. One, because we need to have enough material in between, because after something like this that needs to be tabbed, we need to leave a little bit of meat on the bone. So right now, if I was to measure what this is here, that distance apart, that 0.28 of an inch, that would correspond to what the clearance is. So we'll look into that a little bit further when we get into our example. And so there is clearance, and finally border gap is how much distance is around the edge. So let me bring up a completed project here. And here is our patio chair. So this is the patio chair. You can download this from our website, but to show this product, it'll help you then see the Vcard profile. So there's our patio chair, and I wanted to show you that one because here is where we're talking about a border gap. All this distance around the edge here, all around the edge of your material. So this is a full 4 foot by 8 foot sheet, and I've left a border gap along there of an inch, so that way I've got space to run screws and for a vacuum. Here again, if we look at the nest, the clearance in between, I've left a certain clearance, so when I go and cut these, I'll be able to have enough material in between for tabs. So I've actually left quite a bit of material in between. So you have your 3/8 of a diameter cut here, 3/8 of a diameter cut here, and a good 3/8 of material in between. Leaves me room for tabbing. What happens with something like this is if you don't have a vacuum hold down and you have too many of these little parts cut out like this and there's no meat left in here, it can actually be like a springboard and move back and forth while you're cutting. So that's the first three, the border gap, the bit diameter, and the edge, the tool diameter. Next, let's look into rotating parts, part nesting options. So rotate parts to fit. So you can give these different angles to go in. Now, back to that patio chair, if we had rotated that, these legs here, if we had these going 90 degrees against the grain, what's going to happen with those? Structurally, that project will not be sound. If you were to put weight on the legs and this going against the grain, this very well could fail and snap. So you have to be careful with your rotation. For us, we're just using HDPE plastic. There is no grain to it, and I would play with different rotation angles till I find one that fits best. 15 degrees has always been a pretty good one for what we're doing here. Mirroring parts to fit best. Now something like what we're looking at here is simple. We don't have to worry. If it's mirrored, it's fine. But let's go back again and reference that patio chair. If you notice, underneath here there's a support that goes to the inside of this leg and to the inside of this leg. And what we have with that is we have a right and a left leg. So when we're using the nesting feature, if I would have had go ahead and say mirror the parts, if they need to be mirrored to fit in here, that's fine. Well, if I would have said that's okay, and it could have accidentally said like this, and it gave me two right legs. So then I wouldn't been able, that project wouldn't have come out right. So you got to be careful. It all depends on the project. All right. And finally here, allow parts to fit inside other parts. Well, for us, we're working with something so small here. There's no way that this part is going to fit inside of that part. But to show you an example of a bigger one, here is a smokehouse that we have on our website. It's a wooden smokehouse that you open up here and it smokes different meats and cheeses and nuts and berries. But to look at this, to try to fit this whole project onto one 4-foot by 8-foot sheet, you'll notice here is the front door to that project. Here's the front panel, and there's a cutout for the door. Well, the door right here is up here. It's an inch bigger all the way around than the cutout for the hole because you don't want the smoke to escape. But this piece in here all would have been scrapped. So we fit parts inside of parts for it to be able to maximize efficiency of this material. So that's where that one comes along. And then finally down here we have sheet options, where when we do the nesting, we can have it nest along the X axis, or we can have it nest along the Y axis. All depends on the way you want it to fit. And we'll come back last and do a fit vector and nest boundary. Alright, let's move into nesting this iPhone stand, see how many we can get out of our material. So we know we have a 24-inch by 18-inch piece of material we're working with, and we have our iPhone stand drew, and we drew just one, and we're going to use this nesting feature all the way down here, the bottom right icon, nest selected objects. So first thing I want to do is I want to select the objects that I want to nest. So I've got them highlighted. And now this is a matter of what you have in front of you. I'm going to use a 1/4-inch bit. I got a 1/4-inch O-flute up spiral by Onsrud I'm going to be using. Check. That's a 0.25 diameter. Clearance. That's how much distance I want in between the parts after my cutter compensation is taken in. And again, I'm just going right now off an estimate. I'm going to go and put my bit diameter in there. And again, I can come back and change this if it doesn't look right. And a border gap. What I want to leave for a border. That's the gap I want to leave around the edge. I'd like to leave around 1/2 inch to start and see where that gets us. Rotate the parts. I'm going to leave this as a rotated part because I'm cutting this out of HDPE plastic where there is no grain. Let's go ahead and let it. Is it okay to mirror parts for them to fit in here? Yeah, this doesn't matter if this is flipped over, left, right, up or down. And since parts aren't going to fit inside of each other, I don't even need to check that. And how do I want it to nest? From this bottom left corner, which is where I got it right here, which is this, or the bottom right corner over here, and then I can select along the X or along the Y. I really don't care at this point. I just want to fill this entire sheet up, so I'm not even going to mess with that. I'm hoping I can get, say, 6 of these out of one sheet is my goal. So with these selected, you have to make sure the vectors are selected. You can give them a number, 6, and then hit apply. And what that does is it assigns numbers to the parts, how many it's going to duplicate. There might be projects down the road where maybe you don't need to have equal amounts of parts. You could always assign different numbers. If this was a different project where you needed 6 of one and 8 of another, you could always assign different numbers to different parts. But to keep things matching up here, we want 6 of each of these. So we've got 6 selected for all of these, and I'm just going to hit preview and see what I can get out of there. So yeah, it looks like I did pretty good with getting the amount that I want. However, if I scroll in here and look, it looks like I've got some parts that are pretty close to each other. What's going to be the distance going on here? And what are these cuts exactly? So I'm going to go ahead and come out of this and think that I'm a little too close to each other on this. So what I'm going to do is come out, use my measuring tool, and I'd like to come in here and see exactly how close these are from each other. So from that point over to here, I've only got 0.558 of a distance. So with that being said, if I've got only 0.558 and I got this 1/4 inch bit, say right here, I'm just going to mock up a bit from the top size. Whoa, not 0.25. Them decimal places are crucial. So here's our 2 bits. We have one coming around this part. And again, I'm just doing this visually real quick. And I have one coming around this part. It doesn't leave very much in the middle here. And especially for me right now, I've got to tab this. So 0.03 is not enough meat on the bone, for say, to keep that with enough material for tab. So these are a little close together. So I'm actually just going to go Edit Undo or Control Z on the keyboard and get back to my single one. I can go right back into Nest, and it keeps all the commands that you had in there. We know we can probably get a couple more, but let's get the spacing right first. The clearance, definitely not 0.25. I'd like to add almost 1/4 inch to my spacing. So I'm going to go 0.5 on that and hit Preview. And clearly I can get more than 6 still, but I'm now looking at a better spacing on my part. So let's go reset preview and let's try 8 and see what happens. Let's try 10. Let's see what happens. Hit preview. We can fit 10. Hey, if we can fit 10, I bet we can fit 12. So heck, we can fit 15, right? We can hit 16 if we can hit that. We hit apply and let's preview those. Now we got something going on here where it's made multiple sheets. We clearly can't get 16 of these out of a 24 by 18 sheet. But what the software lets you do is it throws it onto another sheet, saying, hey, if you really do need 16, you just need 2 sheets. And you can make the active sheets down here. You can click on them, and it'll bring that in there for the tool pathing purposes, and you can bring them in. So really, if you did need to cut 16, and it's very nice software how it makes it and pushes it onto the 2 sheets for you. But for us right now, we're going to keep this simple. We've only got the 1 sheet, and I'm going to reset this, and I'm going to just go back to saying, let's see if I can get 10 of these. Okay, so notice that we fit 10, and we also have, you know, a little bit of extra space here, but we don't have quite enough space to fit both the front and the base to the stand. So I'm going to be happy with this setting. And we're going to go ahead and preview this with a toolpath and see what it looks like. Now, some of you are going to be wondering why these are in different colors. Please refer to some of the other trainings we have here about layering. When I draw parts like this, projects like this, I like to put different things on different layers, and you're going to see exactly why that's beneficial when we come over here to toolpathing it. So the first thing is a pocket, where we have the pocket around to get down to the depth for the iPhone to sit in, and we'll go back to the video to show this. But for me to hold shift and go ahead and click on all of these, especially when you got hundreds of parts, this could be a real big nuisance. So if I put everything on a pocket layer, I just have to come down here to the selector and say, hey, closed, I want it to select from the vector selector, I want it to select layers only on the pocket layer. And I hit close, and look, now it's selected all of those. And when I hit calculate, we can preview exactly what that did. And it selected them for me versus me manually having to go and do that. Next one here, I've got the pocket mortise. So instead of me clicking on all these mortises, I can now go selector, there's the mortise layer. And so refer to the layering tutorials, and also get in the habit of reading these. I know when you get into over experience mode and you're in a hurry, the day you don't stop and read this message, it's accidentally going to say 5.0 versus 0.5. And it's okay to go 10,000th down in your spoil board. That's what it's there for. So preview what that does. Okay. And spiral holes, same thing. I'm just going to use these vector selectors on them all. And now it selects everything on that. All 200 of them. That would have been 200 clicks or sweep selects that I would have had to have done. So let's let this guy do it all. And there's all those. And then finally, profile all, selector, everything on the base piece. Close, calculate, and there we go. And notice on this, where it says done now, it has left a distance in between, so there's enough room for my tabs to actually have something to tab to. So that's where it all goes back to our nesting over here, where we have a tool diameter 0.25, that's what goes around here in the blue. The clearance around the parts is the tool diameter, 0.5 or the 0.25 here, plus 0.5 from here down, and then a border gap of a ½ inch all the way around, something for me to put my hole down in. I've rotated parts, and then I've successfully nested these in here. So there is what I would save and say is a very nicely nested iPhone stand. To go back to the first iPhone stand that I videoed and cut, let's preview this one real quick. Same thing, it's layered. I got 4 stands out of this one piece. Before I go out to my machine, I'm going to check in here. I want to double check toolpath summary. It says it's going to take about 10 minutes to do this. This is where I'd come in and say, oh no, if something's going to take 6 hours, I might have a setting wrong. Thing that you want to go in and check is make sure that you have, inches per second set if that's what you're running. If you're looking to cut 3 inches a second, make sure you got that at the right setting. So that's usually a case of where things can go wrong. So let's finish out the video and see this guy in action. So that was nested on this piece of material. This is called HDPE, and it's called King Color Core. King is the manufacturer, and they have all different types of colors you can get as the outside layer and the inside layer. It makes it really neat for a project like this, where when we do pocketing and holes that are through, you get to see the different colors. Again, that was just the Omar plastic nail gun, and they use a Raptor nail. So you can go to raptornails, I believe, .com or Google it, and then you'll be able to bring it up and buy both the plastic nails and the guns there. They're real slick, real big fan. They don't do the greatest in hardwood as far as like a maple or a white oak, but everything else they do great. They'll actually hold stuff down so good. If you get enough nails on a sheet of plywood, you're going to have to work your tail off to get them back out. So here it is, it's doing the pocketing. And pay attention to the order of operations. When you're getting here into CNC, there's certain cuts that you want to do first. And next it's doing the through pocket, which will be for the mortise and tenon joint. And now here's those 200 holes that it's starting to do. And if you look at this file in the toolpath section, look at how I did the ramps on the inside profile for these. It uses a spiral ramp. So take a look at that. It's very, very beneficial for when you're doing drilling operations. So after it drills the holes, the final pass that it's going to do is it's going to go around and it's going to do the exterior profile. So it's going to do the 4 fronts and then the 4 bases. And notice the border gap that's left around. The border gap left me enough room to shoot my nails in. Notice the distance in between the parts, so there's enough room for the tabs to hold. Notice how the little base pieces were rotated differently than the four front parts. So sometimes you can use the nest feature, sometimes you can just go in manually and rotate parts, whatever makes it so you can fit things in there. Remember, a lot of this stuff is just a combination of things, and there's no right or wrong, it's what works best for you. So that's our little iPhone stands. And I'm sure as soon as you guys see this video, there'll be a new iPhone out and we'll have to make new files for you. But all these files will be posted with the video for you to download and play with. A nice little chisel pops these soft tabs out. I like a square 0.1 by 0.1 tab when it comes to this plastic. It's real easy to clean up with a utility knife. Always cut away from yourself, safety first. And they make a nice little tight joint. If you don't ever want them to come apart again, you can put a little glue on it to keep the front from the back from coming apart, but it makes a nice little stand. And that's really the basic for nesting of a simple project like this. And then, alright, to wrap this up, I just want to show you how you can do nesting on planks. So there's a couple different things that I like to do where I'm not using plywood or I'm not using sheet goods, where nothing better than a good old piece of Mother Nature grown maple or oak or walnut or cherry. Any of those are all beautiful wood. So if we really say like these iPhone stands and wanted to start producing them out of material, this would be an option of how you could do it out of hardwoods like this, or softwoods for that matter. So you get these planks from your local, this isn't something you get from Home Depot or Lowe's, because you're paying there for the thing to be planed, ripped, and cut to a finished length. These come straight from either a sawmill or a wood distributor, and the way these come are usually planed down to a certain thickness, and they'll have maybe a straight line rip on one of the edges. But as you notice, when you get wood like this, they sell it by the board foot, and it is all different random widths. That's just how this comes. There's a 10-inch one, an 8-inch, a 5.5, 4 3/4. They're all different widths. So what you can do with your ShopBot is you can actually lay out these different boards up on your table like this and measure where they're at. Take that measurement of these boards and bring it into Vcard Pro. So here we are, Vcard Pro. I'm looking at a 4 foot by 8 foot table. I drew the 4 foot by 8 foot table. I drew my 4 boards to the exact size that they were. I measured those with a tape measure and got the thickness. I got the width and the length of those, and I put them in here. And then I also measured how far they are off from 0, from the X and Y, and then that's where I drew them in here. So this is a way you can do planks like this. So you don't, it'd take you a lot of time, and you wouldn't really need to on a part like this, is to glue that up and make that into a panel. But if the parts can fit out of there, there's no sense of making it into a panel. But now we are talking about wood that has grain, and something like the iPhone stand. There really isn't anything structural, but there's the cosmetics and the eye appeal. So we want to take that into consideration. So to do something like this, let's just make this quick so you can see it. Go back into your nesting options, and down here, first vector is nest boundary. So what you would do for that is you would select the one that you want to nest it into. So let's just say for these guys here, we'll do, let's see if we can do another 10 of these. Apply, that puts 10 to both of them because we need 10 of each. So 1/4 inch diameter, again what we did earlier as far as play with your clearances and your borders. This one, however, I put it as a 90 degrees because I don't want to see these things at 15 or 5 degree increments, because I want them to all have the grain going the same way. So I did put that at 90 degrees, or I could have rotated here. And now I want to have them nest along the X, because that's the length of my board. So now the sheet options does kind of come into play. So first vector is nest boundary, check. And then the next thing you want to do is hold the shift key down and then sweep select these two. And let's hit preview and see how that fits in there. So good, it's showing you what it's going to do. And again, here's where we could come back in and we can mess with the gaps to make sure the clearances are right and the diameters, but we've seen all that earlier. And sometimes too, once you get these just right and you're okay with it, and like me, you want to be a little picky, you can always just take these here and say, hey, they look good, but I want to move them exactly in the center, so I will hold the shift down and say, hey, I want that centered up and down in my material. And again, I would play around with this more, spend more time, and maximize my efficiency of nesting those out of there. But if you were happy with that, then just grab another set and nest it to the next plank. So hope you enjoyed the training on nesting. Please feel free to view our website and the Vectric website for other training tutorials and videos, and hope to see you at next week's training. Thank you.